In previous videos, we've built a solution from scratch, very similar to the one that the work with pattern builds automatically. When comparing the two solutions at runtime, the first thing you'll see is their different design. That's because so far, we were focused on logic leaving the user interface aside, an aspect we'll get into later on. Apart from the visual differences, both web panels are showing a grid with information on tourist attractions with filters, and the possibility to, for example, update information. In both solutions, the transaction is invoked in update mode. Something to be noted from the beginning is a common feature on all the screens navigated. Regardless of the page you open, you'll see this part. For instance, if you directly invoke the parallel transaction, attraction without parameters, it's right here. Or, if you now go to the view of an attraction, the patterns view, or the one you implemented from scratch. Note that, beyond those differences, they continue to have this aspect in common. If you now go to Genexus to see the form of this view you implemented, where is this common feature? You won't find it either when opening the attraction transaction or the parallel transaction that doesn't receive parameters and going to its form. What you see here is a text block control with the name of the transaction. Below is an error viewer control showing messages such as success or failure. Then there is this action group control, which shows the navigation and select buttons. And then come the attributes, and another action group with the buttons. Where is the upper sector? When you look at the transaction properties, you'll see a web transaction group with 4 significant properties. The first one to assign the object with which the style will be applied, the second one to specify the template that will be used to generate the form, the third one will be explained hereafter, and the fourth one is the master page property. There, you'll indicate the master page where the page corresponding to this transaction object should be loaded. Note that it offers options that correspond to all master pages defined so far in your KB. These pages are created upon the creation of a KB, so you'll have some by default, but you can still create others. Note that the transaction was created by default in association with this master page. If you now open the other objects that you saw at runtime, it's no surprise that they also have a master page, and it's the same one. And you'll also note that the web panels also have the same 4 properties. So let's look for this master page and see what it's all about. If you don't know where it is, you may look for it here and open it. If you look at its properties, you'll see one called Style and one called Type. But Master Page is no longer there. Why? Because it's a special type of web panel, the Master Page type. A web panel of this type will have a special control called Content Placeholder. This is where any page that has this one as its master page will be loaded. Then the transaction will be loaded into the space with the view and everything else we saw. Here is the text block control that you see at runtime called application name. For example, try to change it to travel agency. Here you have an image that may also be changed for this one that you previously inserted in the KB. note the effect of these changes on your application. And here they are. Another control that you'll see in this master panel is a user control called Sidebar that's typical of the Unanimo design system. This control comes by default, showing a deployable sidebar that provides access to various objects.
So, we've already seen two of the three types of web screens, the master page and the common web page, which is what we've been working with so far every time we create a web panel or a transaction. We only have to study the web page of component type. To do this, let's go back over our steps a little and remember what we had implemented in the previous videos. We had the limitation of the attractions work with element, where the user could filter by country by choosing a value in this variable, which was being used in the grid conditions to filter by that country if the variable was not empty. But also, from this panel, the user could see the information of an attraction by clicking on its name, and at the same time, from there, a link was displayed above the country name to show all the relevant information of the country. That's why we called this web panel that received the country identifier in the attribute and showed its name, and then a grid identical to the first one, with the same filters by attraction name, the same columns and actions and general info, and also information about the cities. We can clearly see that part of this panel is almost identical to the other one. Let's suppose that we no longer want the update option to be offered with this image, but we want it to be as it is in the pattern with the word update. We'll have to replace this image with a text block on both panels. To avoid these duplications and to program the behavior and design of a part of the panel only once, we have web panels of the component type. What's repeated in this case? This whole section of the screen and its behavior. Then, we did a save as of this web panel, to which we only removed the country ID variable from the form and placed it instead as a parameter. It'll no longer be entered directly by the user in the form of this screen, but will be received from the caller. We see that the conditions remain identical, as do the events, and everything else. The other change is that we modified the type property, switching it to component. From now on, this web panel can be a component of another one. So, the next thing we did was a save as of our original panel. And we replaced all those controls that we now place in the component web panel with a component type control. Of course, we deleted all the events, here we leave comments, that will now be in the component. By placing a control of this type, we're saying that whatever we specify must be loaded and executed in there. We have to tell it that an instance of the web component we've just shown, country attractions info, has to be created in that component. We can do it in a static way, indicating it in the properties. Here we indicate which will be the component type object, and here the parameter sent. Let's try it. we see exactly the same. If we filter by name of attraction, it's working perfectly. Now what happens if we want to filter by country? Nothing happens. Why? The country ID variable is on a different panel than the attraction grid through which it's filtered. Here, we have to use the control value changed event, which captures the moment the value of the country ID variable control is changed, and have a new instance of the component created, passing it now the new value of the variable. Let's try it. We'll refresh and try to filter by France. Perfect. And there by attraction name. Also perfect. And of course, we did something similar with the panel that showed the country information. We did a save as of this panel, replacing this whole section with a component that will be loaded with this panel. This way, in the new panel, the country ID is not a variable, but it's received in a parameter. So, we can create the component instance in a static way only once inside the execution of this web panel, passing it here the parameter that in this case comes in the attribute received in the parm rule. Note that from the original panel, we removed the controls and programming of events associated with the attractions, and only left those of the cities. Let's try it at runtime. To do this, we invoke this panel and not the previous one. We filter by city, and everything's working correctly. Now, let's change the image to perform the update, and place the text update instead. To do so, in the component web panel, we create a variable of character 20 type. We insert it in the grid. In the start event, we assign it the update value, which is what we want the user to see. We remove the assignment of an image to the variable we had, because we're going to remove it from the grid. And now, let's take the title off the new variable and make it read-only. Let's try to run it. It says that the click is not a valid event. We forgot to change it so that it's the click of the new variable and not the old one. Now we run it. Now we check how it looks in the pattern. Why does it have this much nicer design here? Let's find the control properties in the web panel generated by the pattern. Let's look at these two, class and column class. And let's see the values of these properties for our control, the one we inserted manually in the web panel. They're different. Let's assign them the same ones as those of the pattern. And we'll try it. We can see it here. Here we begin to understand how to manipulate the design of the screens. In summary, we've seen three types of web panels that are related to each other. The master page type, which offers a common layout for all the pages of the application or a part of it, so as not to have to repeat the same thing every time for each page. For example, the menus usually go here. This object in particular contains in its form a special control, content placeholder, where the web pages will be loaded. That of web page type, which is the one we've been studying, can have a specific master page associated with it, and only one, since it'll be loaded in its content placeholder. And that of component type, which is useful precisely to reuse the same design and programming in different objects. In order to have an object defined as a component type web panel loaded into another web object, the component type control is used, which can be loaded either statically or dynamically. The more components we identify and use, the better the app will be. Of course, there is much more to study in this topic. For example, what happens with the execution of events in a panel with components, how components are refreshed, and so on. But this is more than enough for now.